A mother and her young daughter went camping alone in the desert and never returned, vanishing for over 11 years. But one day, her son finds their empty truck deep in the desert. A discovery that would change everything and reveal the shocking truth about what really happened to them. The Texas sun beat down mercilessly on Elijah Mercer's back as he trudged across the cracked, barren landscape of the Presidio County desert. Sweat trickled down his spine, his hat providing scant protection against the relentless heat. The metal detector in his hands felt heavier with each step, but he refused to stop. Behind him, Trent Wilson followed, occasionally checking his compass and wiping his brow. "You sure we're not walking in circles, Eli?" Trent called out, his voice carried away by the hot desert wind. "We've been at this for hours." Eli paused, turning back to look at his friend. "Thanks for coming with me, man. I know you'd rather be anywhere else." Trent shrugged, adjusting the straps of his backpack. "Hey, a deal's a deal. You go on a date with Jenny, I lend you my Jeep and gear, though I still think my sister's getting the better end of the bargain." A hint of a smile crossed Eli's face, but it quickly faded as he turned back to survey the vast expanse of the Big Bend region stretching before them. The Chinati Mountains loomed in the distance, silent sentinels watching their progress. "It was exactly 11 years ago today," Eli said quietly, sweeping the metal detector in a practiced arc. "Mom took Celine camping, and I stayed with grandparents because I thought camping was boring." He laughed bitterly. 15-year-old me was too cool for the desert. Trent nodded, having heard this story many times over the years of their friendship, but he let Eli talk. Sometimes, Trent thought, his friend needed to say the words aloud to keep the memories alive. "Mom was always going on about how her dad took her camping out here when she was little," Eli continued, his eyes scanning the horizon. "Said it shaped who she was, that it was part of our Texas heritage. She wanted Celine to experience it too, not just grow up with screens on her face, as she put it." The wind picked up, sending a cloud of dust swirling around them. Trent pulled his bandana up over his nose. "One night," Eli continued, "it was supposed to be one night of camping, and they'd be back the next day. But they never came home, Trent. 11 years, and it's like they vanished into thin air." Trent remembered the massive search efforts that had followed. Eli had created an online community, rallying hundreds of volunteers to comb the desert. The police had been involved for months. Every piece of potential evidence, water bottles, clothing items, even a stuffed rabbit that had belonged to Celine, had given momentary hope, only to lead nowhere. "The police gave up after 4 years, Eli said, his voice hardening. "Told me she probably just left, took Celine, and started a new life somewhere. But I knew my mom better than that. She wouldn't just leave, not without saying goodbye." Trent nodded, remembering the toll the disappearance had taken on his friend. After Eli's grandfather passed away 2 years ago, the search had become even more important. The old man had been relentless, using his knowledge of the Texas desert to guide the efforts. Now Eli carried that burden alone. "I think we should try somewhere new," Eli said suddenly, stopping and pointing west. "I've covered the usual areas hundreds of times. What if they went further out?" Trent frowned, reaching for his water bottle. "The rangers warned us about going too far west of the Chinati Mountains, remember? No cell signal, unstable terrain." "It's dangerous out there, Eli. Not that far," Eli assured him. "Just beyond where the police searched." "Please, Trent." Trent sighed, taking a long drink before capping his water bottle. "All right, but you better not bail on that date with Jenny. She's been asking about you for months." Eli nodded, his mind already elsewhere, as they resumed walking. The terrain gradually became more treacherous, with loose rocks and steep inclines. At the last point where they still had cell service, Trent paused to send his sister a ping of their location. "Insurance," he explained with a grin. "If we don't make it back, at least someone will know where to start looking." They pressed on, the landscape becoming increasingly jagged and unfamiliar. After another hour, Trent stopped, breathing heavily. "Eli, we need to turn back," he said firmly. "We're running low on water. There's no cell signal, and I swear I just saw a rattlesnake. This is exactly why the rangers warned us." "Just a little further," Eli pleaded, pointing to a ridge ahead. "Let me check over that rise, and then we can head back." Reluctantly, Trent agreed. "Fine, but I'll wait here. You'll just head to that cliff edge and take a look." Eli nodded gratefully and moved ahead alone. The heat was unbearable now, the sun directly overhead as he approached the edge of a steep-walled washout. Squinting against the glare, something caught his eye, a metallic glint at the base of the canyon. His heart racing, Eli carefully inched closer to the edge. There, partially hidden by years of dust and desert brush, was a truck. Not just any truck, an upside-down vehicle with a familiar sticker on its side, blue, orange, and green, forming the shape of mountain peaks. "Trent," he shouted, his voice cracking with emotion. "Trent, get over here." Trent rushed to his side, alarm turning to confusion as Eli pointed frantically at the ravine below. "That's my mom's truck," Eli whispered, his hands shaking. "That's her mountain sticker. I'd recognize it anywhere." Trent squinted, then quickly pulled out his phone to take pictures. "You're right, that's definitely a truck down there." Eli was already looking for a way down. "We need to get closer. There might be something." "No," Trent said firmly, grabbing his arm. "Absolutely not. The walls are too steep, and we don't have proper equipment. We need to go back and report this to the police." "But," "No buts, Eli. This is what you've been searching for. Don't risk your life now when we're so close. Let the professionals handle it." Eli stared longingly at the truck below, then reluctantly nodded. He watched as Trent marked their exact location on his offline map, then turned to follow his friend back the way they'd come, his heart pounding with a mixture of dread and hope. The drive back to civilization felt interminable. Trent's precious Jeep kicked up clouds of dust as they sped along the rough desert roads. The moment they reached cell service, Eli's phone lit up with notifications. But he ignored them all, instead dialing a number he knew by heart. Detective Sawyer answered a gruff voice on the third ring. "Detective, it's Elijah Mercer," Eli said, his words tumbling out. "We found my mom's truck. It's in a ravine west of the Chinati Mountains." There was a moment of silence. "Eli, are you sure it's her vehicle?" "Positive. It has her mountain sticker on the side. I've got photos." He glanced at Trent, who nodded and held up his phone. "We can send them to you right now." "Send them through," Detective Russ Sawyer said, his tone sharpening with professional interest. "Where exactly did you find it?" "I'll text you the coordinates," Eli replied, as Trent focused on driving. "When can you get out there?" "Meet me at the county sheriff's office in Alpine," Sawyer instructed. "We'll talk there." After ending the call, Eli turned to Trent. "We're meeting him in Alpine." Trent patted the dashboard of his Jeep affectionately. "Good thing my baby got us back safely. I was worried those desert roads might be too much." When they arrived at the parking lot of the sheriff's office, Trent practically leaped out to inspect his vehicle, running his hands lovingly over the dusty exterior. "Not a scratch," he said, planting a dramatic kiss on the hood. "Everything's perfect." Eli rolled his eyes but couldn't help smiling at his friend's antics. Inside the station, they found Detective Sawyer already reviewing the photos they'd sent. "I've got the search and rescue team on standby," Sawyer informed them, his weathered face serious beneath salt and pepper hair. "If this is Jessica's truck, we need to move fast." "It is her truck," Eli insisted. "I'd bet my life on it." Sawyer nodded, studying a map spread across his desk. "The location you've marked is remote, but we can get there before sundown if we leave now. I've called in specialists who can safely recover the vehicle." Within an hour, a convoy was assembled. Police vehicles, a search and rescue team, and a heavy-duty tow truck equipped for difficult extractions. Eli and Trent rode with Detective Sawyer, taking a different route that would bring them closer to the site. "We've been coordinating with the park rangers," Sawyer explained as they drove. "They know the terrain better than anyone. There's a path that'll get us within a quarter-mile of where you spotted the truck." When they arrived, the scene was a flurry of activity. Search and rescue specialists were already setting up equipment to reach the ravine safely. A helicopter circled overhead, its rotors throwing up dust as it assessed the situation. "They'll use the helicopter to stabilize the extraction," Sawyer explained, pointing to heavy cables being unloaded. "Then the crane will do the actual lifting." Eli watched in anxious silence as the recovery team worked. Hours seemed to pass in minutes as the specialists rappelled down to secure the vehicle and the helicopter maneuvered into position. Slowly, carefully, the crushed truck was lifted from its resting place and brought to level ground. As it touched down, Eli stepped forward, only to be held back by Sawyer. "Let the forensics team do their job first," the detective cautioned. The truck was in terrible condition, tires deflated, frame warped, and covered in years of corrosion and dust. Forensic technicians swarmed around it, taking photographs and samples, while others communicated via radio with the station. Detective called one of the technicians, a woman with gray-streaked hair pulled into a tight bun. "You need to see this." Sawyer moved to join her, gesturing for Eli and Trent to stay back. The three huddled in conversation for several minutes before Sawyer returned, his expression grim. "According to our initial assessment, this truck wasn't here 11 years ago," he said quietly. "What? That's impossible," Eli protested. "This is my mom's truck. It has to be from when they disappeared." "I'm not saying it isn't her truck," Sawyer clarified. "But our records show we searched this area during the initial investigation." "There was no truck here then. So how did it get here?" Trent asked, confusion evident in his voice. The forensic technician approached, tablet in hand. "Based on the rust patterns and sun damage, we estimate it's been here for approximately 7 to 8 years. Meaning it was moved," Sawyer concluded. "Someone took the truck after your mother and sister disappeared, kept it somewhere for 3 to 4 years, then drove or pushed it off this cliff to hide it permanently." Eli felt the ground sway beneath him. "You're saying someone took them? This wasn't an accident?" "It appears that way," Sawyer confirmed grimly. "Whoever did this likely waited until the search efforts had died down before disposing of the vehicle." The implications hit Eli like a physical blow. All these years he'd imagined an accident, his mother taking a wrong turn, the truck sliding off an unstable cliff. The thought that someone had deliberately harmed his family, then coldly calculated how to hide the evidence, made him physically ill. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the desert, an officer approached Detective Sawyer holding a dusty, hard-case box. "Found this in the truck's storage compartment, sir," the officer reported. It was wedged under the passenger seat. Sawyer accepted the box, bringing it over to where Eli and Trent waited. "Recognize this?" Eli's eyes widened. "That's Mom's drone case." The plastic case had nearly melted together from years of exposure to the desert heat. Sawyer used a multi-tool from his pocket to carefully pry at the warped edges while Eli watched, barely breathing. With a crack, the lid finally gave way. "It's empty," Eli said, disappointment crashing through him as he stared at the molded foam interior designed to hold a drone and controller. "They took it? Makes sense," Sawyer mused. A drone would have been valuable even back then. Trent, who had been examining the case closely, suddenly pointed to a tiny gap between the foam and the plastic shell. "Wait, there's something here." He carefully slid his finger into the crevice and extracted a small plastic clip containing a micro SD memory card. "Good eyes, son," Sawyer said, taking the card. "Let's see what's on this." They moved to a temporary command tent that had been set up, where a laptop sat on a folding table. Sawyer inserted the card into a reader, but nothing happened. "Damaged?" Eli asked, his voice tight with anxiety. "Maybe," Sawyer muttered, removing the card and examining it. The connectors are corroded. Trent took the card, carefully cleaning the metal contacts with the edge of his t-shirt before handing it back. Try it now. Sawyer reinserted the card, and this time a folder appeared on the screen. Inside were dozens of video files with dates corresponding to the camping trip 11 years ago. It worked, Eli breathed, moving closer to the screen. The first video showed Jessica Mercer sitting on the ladder of the truck, smiling into the camera. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a ponytail, her face glowing with the joy of being outdoors. Beside her sat a small blonde girl in a yellow dress. Celine, only 4 years old, giggling as she waved at the drone. "Mom," Eli whispered, his voice cracking. And Celine, they watched several videos showing the campsite, the tent mounted on top of the truck, mother and daughter exploring the nearby terrain. The final video began normally, but then the drone ascended higher, capturing sweeping panoramic views of the surrounding desert. "This is important," Sawyer said, pausing the video on the panoramic shot. "Based on these landmarks, we can confirm they were still in the designated camping area when this footage was recorded. Not anywhere near where we found the truck. So someone definitely moved the vehicle," Trent concluded. "Yes," Sawyer agreed grimly. "This is now officially a crime investigation, not just a missing persons case." Eli pulled a USB drive from his pocket. "Can I get a copy of the videos?" Sawyer nodded, and a technician transferred the files while the forensic team continued their methodical examination of the truck in the background. A tow truck had arrived to transport the vehicle back to town for more detailed analysis. As sunset approached, Eli noticed a news van pulling up to the perimeter established by the police. "Is that necessary?" he asked, gesturing toward the reporters setting up their equipment. "This was a high-profile case," Sawyer explained. "The local community invested a lot in the search effort. They deserve to know we found something significant." The detective walked Eli toward the news crew. "We also need to announce that we're reopening the case with new evidence. Your mother and sister would look very different now, especially Celine. She'd be 15 now, not the 4-year-old in the missing persons reports." Eli hadn't considered that. How would he even recognize his sister after all this time? The news team efficiently set up their equipment, and soon a reporter was standing before the camera.
Oh.
The recovered truck visible in the background.
Were.
Live at a breaking development in the 11-year-old disappearance of Jessica and Celine Mercer. The reporter began. Today, their truck was discovered in a remote ravine west of the Chinati Mountains. Eli watched numbly as Trent was interviewed first, explaining how they discovered the vehicle. "We were just exploring, and Eli insisted on checking one more ridge," Trent recounted. "If he hadn't been so persistent, we never would have found it." Then it was Eli's turn. The reporter's expression was sympathetic as she asked, "What does this discovery mean to you after all these years?" Eli swallowed hard, looking directly into the camera. "Mom, Celine, if you're out there watching this somehow, ... I never stopped looking. I never will. We're going to find you." Detective Sawyer concluded the segment with a professional summary of the investigation status and a request for any information from the public. As the news crew packed up, Sawyer approached Eli and Trent. "We should head back to Alpine. It'll be dark soon." Behind them, the forensic team continued their meticulous work, and the tow truck prepared to transport the vehicle. Eli took one last look at his mother's truck, the last tangible connection to her he'd found in 11 years, before climbing into Detective Sawyer's vehicle for the drive back to town. The desert sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples as they drove back to Alpine. Detective Sawyer dropped them at the station, the building's windows already illuminated in the gathering dusk. "We're organizing a comprehensive search of the area for tomorrow," Sawyer informed them as they climbed out of the vehicle. "Given what we've found, we're treating this as a potential crime scene." "I'm coming with you," Eli stated immediately. Sawyer frowned. "That's not advisable. We'll be covering rough terrain, and there's still plenty of danger out there. I've been searching that desert for 11 years, Eli countered. I know it better than most of your officers. The detective sighed, recognizing the determination in the young man's eyes. You can wait at the base camp, but if we find anything significant, you stay put until we've secured the area. Deal. Eli nodded, relief washing over him. Deal. Sawyer turned to Trent. You don't have to join us tomorrow. This isn't your fight. Trent glanced at Eli, then back to the detective. Someone needs to keep an eye on this guy. He tends to wander off when he gets an idea in his head. I'll see you both at 6 a.m. sharp, Sawyer said, a hint of respect in his voice. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be a long day. As the detective drove away, Trent clapped Eli on the shoulder. Let's get you home. They climbed into Trent's Jeep and headed through the quiet streets of Alpine. The small Texas town was already buzzing with news of the discovery. As they stopped at a red light, Eli noticed the television in a nearby diner showing their interview from earlier. Through the windows of shops and cafes, he could see people gathered around screens watching the breaking news. Looks like the whole town knows, Trent observed, nodding toward a convenience store where customers stood transfixed before a television. Good, Eli said quietly. Maybe someone will remember something they didn't think was important before. Trent pulled up in front of Eli's modest house, the porch light already on. A habit Eli had maintained since his grandfather's passing, always leaving a light on in case his mother and sister somehow found their way home. You sure you don't want me to stay? Trent asked, concerned about leaving his friend alone after such an emotional day. Eli shook his head. I need some time to process everything, but thanks, man, for everything. Don't mention it, Trent replied, then added with a small smile. But remember, you still owe Jenny that date. A tired laugh escaped Eli. I won't forget. Inside his house, Eli headed straight to his bedroom and powered on his computer. He plugged in his personal USB drive, the one holding the drone footage the detective had given him, and began methodically going through each video. There were dozens, and he was determined to catch any detail that might have been overlooked. The coffee maker in the kitchen saw plenty of use as the night wore on. By his third cup, Eli's eyes were burning from fatigue, but he refused to stop. He watched each clip multiple times, focusing on different elements, the background terrain, his mother's expressions, the equipment visible in their campsite. It was well past midnight when something caught his attention in one of the panoramic shots. His mother had flown the drone as far as its range would allow, capturing views of the distant landscape. Eli paused the video, zooming in on a section of the horizon that showed a jagged ridgeline. That's not on any of the camping maps, he muttered to himself, reaching for his grandfather's old topographic map stored in a chest beneath his bed. Spreading the yellowed papers across his desk, Eli compared the ridgeline in the video to various locations on the maps. After nearly an hour of cross-referencing, he found it. A marked-off area labeled Private Military Testing Zone, inactive, bordering the Chinati Mountains. What the hell? He whispered, leaning closer. A faded note in his grandfather's handwriting was scrawled in the margin. Danger. Unstable cliffs. Next to it was a small notation about restricted access dating back decades. Eli remembered his grandfather and mother discussing such places during his childhood. Both had worked in geography-related fields, his grandfather as a surveyor for the state of Texas, his mother as an environmental consultant. Their shared passion for the outdoors had shaped family vacations and weekend excursions throughout his childhood. This is why his mother had been so insistent about taking Celine camping. She wanted to pass on the family legacy of exploration and appreciation for the natural world, just as her father had done for her. Excitement building, Eli quickly photographed his discovery and texted the images to both Trent and Detective Sawyer. Only after sending did he glance at the clock. 3:24 a.m., too late for any reasonable person to be awake. With a sigh, Eli leaned back in his chair. He'd have to wait until morning for a response, but for the first time in years, he felt like he was truly closing in on answers. The station was already bustling when Eli arrived the next morning, bleary-eyed but determined. Trent stood by the coffee machine, looking far too alert for someone who had been up since dawn. "Got your message at 3:30 in the morning." Trent greeted him, handing over a steaming cup. "You do realize normal people sleep at night, right?" "Did you show it to Sawyer?" Eli asked, ignoring the jab. "He's seen it," Trent confirmed, "but don't get your hopes up." Detective Sawyer approached from across the room, several files tucked under his arm. "Eli, about your discovery." "We need to check that military testing ground," Eli interrupted. "My grandfather marked it specifically on his maps." Sawyer raised a hand. "I appreciate your thoroughness, but we can't just march into a restricted area, inactive or not. We need proper authorization." "But what if they're there?" Eli pressed. "What if whoever took them is hiding at that facility?" "The place has been inactive for decades," Sawyer explained patiently. "We checked our records after your text. There are only a few access roads, and they've been overgrown for years. It's legally off limits, and we have no concrete evidence suggesting your family was taken there." Eli started to protest, but Sawyer continued firmly. "We're sticking with the original plan today, a thorough search of the area where the truck was found. If that yields nothing, then we'll consider expanding our perimeter." Recognizing the finality in the detective's tone, Eli reluctantly nodded. "Fine. When do we leave?" An hour later, they were back in the desert, a larger convoy this time with additional search personnel and equipment. The base camp had been expanded, with several tents housing communications, equipment, and supplies. "You two will wait here," Sawyer instructed, handing them a satellite phone. "If we go out of radio range, use this to contact the command center." As the search teams dispersed across the rugged terrain, Eli and Trent settled into the shade of the main tent. Two officers remained behind to maintain communications and coordinate the search efforts. Eli paced restlessly while Trent opened his laptop and began typing. "What are you doing?" Eli asked, peering over his friend's shoulder. "Looking for any information on that inactive military testing ground," Trent replied. "There might be satellite images or old news articles about it." Eli stopped pacing, impressed. "You believe me?" "I believe you're obsessed enough to be right sometimes," Trent said with a smirk. "Besides, I'm curious now." For the next hour, they scoured the internet for information, finding only vague references to the facility's existence and nothing about its purpose or current status. "The roads are definitely overgrown," Trent confirmed, showing Eli a recent satellite image. "But look here. There's what might be an alternative path. It's faint, but something's been driving through there recently." One of the young officers, who had been listening with increasing interest, approached their table. "I could take you to check it out if you want." "Really?" Eli asked, surprised the officer nodded. "I heard what Detective Sawyer said this morning when you brought it up, but I agree with you. If someone's been using those old facilities, we should know about it. Sawyer would have our heads," Trent warned. "We'll just do a quick reconnaissance," the officer suggested. "Stay in the Jeep, observe from a distance. If we see anything suspicious, we'll report back immediately." "This would be off the record," Eli clarified. "Completely," the officer confirmed. "And I won't be responsible if anything happens. But we'll have the satellite phone with us." Trent hesitated, but Eli was already standing. "Let's go." After telling the remaining officer they were going to survey the immediate area, the three of them climbed into Trent's Jeep and set out toward the coordinates of the old military facility. "I'm Ryan, by the way," the young officer introduced himself as they drove. "I've been following your family's case since I joined the force. It's kind of famous around here." The drive took them through increasingly remote terrain, following barely visible tracks that wound between rocky outcroppings. After about 40 minutes, Trent slowed the Jeep. "The main access road should be just ahead," he said, consulting his GPS. "But it doesn't look like anyone's been through there in years." "Wait," Ryan pointed to their right. "What's that?" A faint trail diverged from the main path, leading toward a cluster of low hills. Unlike the overgrown road, this path showed signs of recent use, flattened vegetation, and tire tracks in the sandy soil. "Someone's definitely been here," Eli said, excitement building. Trent cautiously turned onto the makeshift trail, the Jeep bouncing over the uneven ground. As they crested a small rise, Ryan suddenly signaled them to stop. "Cut the engine," he whispered. Trent complied, and a heavy silence fell over them. In the distance, barely visible through the heat haze, stood a collection of weathered structures, the remains of the military testing facility. Ryan pulled out a pair of binoculars from his equipment belt and scanned the area. There's not much to see. Some old tents, a few storage containers. Doesn't look like anyone's there now. He passed the binoculars to Eli, who studied the abandoned site intently. The buildings were in disrepair, windows broken, and roofs partially collapsed. Nothing moved except the occasional dust devil swirling across the open ground. "It doesn't look like anyone's been there in years," Eli admitted, disappointment evident in his voice. Ryan nodded. "We should head back and report this to Sawyer. Even if it's nothing, he should know people have been using this trail." Reluctantly, Eli agreed. As Trent turned the Jeep around, he took one last look at the desolate facility, the hope he'd felt earlier slowly fading. Back at the base camp, Eli's restlessness only increased as the afternoon wore on. The search teams had reported no significant findings, and Detective Sawyer wasn't expected back for several more hours. "I can't just sit here," Eli declared, standing abruptly. "I want to see the ravine again, where we found the truck." "The recovery site?" one of the officers asked. "There's another base tent set up there for the forensic team. It's within the safe perimeter." "Can we drive over there?" Eli asked. The officer nodded. "Should be fine. Stay on the marked paths and check in when you arrive." Trent sighed, pulling his keys from his pocket. "Let me guess. We're going?" "We're going," Eli confirmed. As they climbed into the Jeep, Trent frowned at the fuel gauge. "We should find a gas station first. I don't want to risk running empty out here." They drove to the nearest service station, a lonely outpost on the edge of the desert. Trent pulled up to a pump and stepped out. "I'll go pay," he said, heading toward the small convenience store. Eli remained by the Jeep, stretching his legs and gazing across the empty landscape. Lost in thought, he didn't notice the pickup truck that pulled in behind them, or the four men who emerged from it. The first blow caught him completely by surprise, a fist to the back of his head that sent him staggering. Before he could recover, rough hands seized him. He fought back, landing a solid punch on one attacker, but they quickly overwhelmed him. Through the convenience store window, he saw Trent rushing out, shouting something he couldn't hear. Then another blow connected with his temple, and darkness claimed him. When Eli regained consciousness, his head throbbed with pain. He blinked, trying to focus on his surroundings. He was in a dimly lit room that appeared to be a bar or a pub, sunlight filtering through small, dirty windows. Through one of them, he could see desert stretching to the horizon. A man with a scar across his cheek approached, noticing Eli's open eyes. "Hey, he's awake," he called over his shoulder. "It really is the guy from the news." Another man joined him, examining Eli with calculating eyes. "Boss is going to like this. Rich boy come looking for his mommy." He chuckled coldly. "Maybe we can get a nice ransom." The door at the far end of the room opened, and a third man entered. Behind him, Eli caught a glimpse of a blonde woman who held the door, though she disappeared from view almost immediately. Something about her stirred a vague recognition in Eli's mind, but the thought slipped away as the man, clearly the leader, approached. "What the hell did you idiots do?" the leader demanded, glaring at the other men. "You were supposed to check the perimeter, not kidnap someone?" The scarred man gestured toward Eli. "Boss, this is the guy from the news, the one looking for that missing truck." The leader cursed vividly. "You absolute morons. You've brought him here. Now the police will be searching everywhere for him too. He turned away, lowering his voice as he conferred with the others, but Eli strained to hear. Talk to the others. Need to move everything. Prepare something to throw them off. The leader struck the scarred man on the back of the head. We're leaving tonight. Pack everything. We're done here. Eli cleared his throat. I heard what you said, he called out, his voice raspy. And I saw that woman. That was my sister, Celine. The room fell silent as the leader turned slowly to face him. Where's my friend? Eli demanded. What have you done with Trent? The leader approached, his expression calculating. You should have stopped looking. You should have let the police close the case and move on with your life. His voice hardened. That woman wasn't your sister. Your mother and sister are dead, buried somewhere in this desert. And soon you'll join them. You relying, Eli said firmly. I recognized her. She looks just like my sister. The leader studied him for a long moment, then seemed to reach a decision. Perhaps we can come to an arrangement, he said smoothly. I could release your sister and your friend in exchange. For you telling the police to end their investigations, what have you done to my sister? Eli demanded. The leader shrugged. We're just simple poachers trying to make a living in this harsh land. We saw a woman and child alone in the desert with expensive equipment. It should have been a simple robbery. His expression darkened. But your mother fought back, pulled a gun on 2 of my men. We had to restrain her, but she wouldn't cooperate. She was ... difficult. In the end, we had no choice. You killed her? Ah, Eli whispered. The girl was too young to understand what happened, with no one to claim her. The leader continued, seemingly unbothered by Eli's horror. So we raised her, changed her name, taught her to work. She helps with our operations. She's 15, Eli said through clenched teeth. And quite useful, the leader replied. She had questions when she was younger, but she doesn't remember her real life anymore. This is all she knows. He stepped closer to Eli. Think about my offer. Your sister and friend go free. You tell the police to back off, and everyone wins. I'll give you some time to consider. With that, he turned and left the room, motioning for his men to follow. The door closed behind them, and Eli heard the distinct click of a lock. Left alone, Eli surveyed his surroundings, seeking anything that might help him escape. The bar was cluttered with various items, bottles, glasses, old photos, and trinkets lining the shelves. His gaze stopped on a familiar object, a drone controller and the drone itself sitting on a high shelf behind the bar. His mother's drone. The sight of it sent a wave of grief through him. These men had killed his mother, stolen his sister's childhood, and now thought they could simply bargain their way out of justice. As he looked around more carefully, another object caught his attention, a framed photograph hanging on the wall. It showed the inactive military training ground from a different angle than he'd seen before, with several men standing beside trucks loaded with crates. Eli's mind raced. These weren't just random poachers or robbers. They were organized, using the abandoned facility for something illegal. Hours passed in tense silence. Through the window, Eli watched as the sun began to sink toward the horizon. The sounds of movement outside the room had quieted, but occasionally he heard voices or footsteps passing nearby. The door suddenly opened, startling him. The blonde woman he'd glimpsed earlier entered cautiously, closing the door behind her. In the better light, Eli could see her clearly now, tall and slender, with features that eerily mimicked his mother's, but her eyes were wary, hardened by years of a life he couldn't imagine. Celine, he whispered. She approached slowly, studying him. No, I'm Laura, she said quietly. Though sometimes I dreamt people calling me that. Celine, do you remember me? Eli asked, his heart pounding. I'm your brother, Elijah. She tilted her head, studying him closely. Was I really kidnapped? They said they found me lost in the desert. How do I know you're actually my family? Eli paused for a moment, then answered without hesitation. 4, he said. You were taken when you were 4. You're 15 now. And that drone, it belonged to our mother. She nodded slowly, then pointed to the drone on the shelf. That? No, it's just a junk they found in the desert. Yes, it belonged to our mom, Eli confirmed eagerly. Dad gave it to her for her birthday the year before you went camping. You used to call it the flying camera. Something flashed in her eyes, recognition perhaps, or a distant memory stirring. She moved closer. I want to believe you, she said finally. I don't remember much from before, but sometimes I dream about a woman with blonde hair who called me Celine. She touched her own hair unconsciously. Relief flooded through Eli. We need to get out of here, both of us, and my friend Trent. Do you know where they're keeping him? In the shed behind the bar, she replied. But listen to me, these people. They've never hurt me. The boss, he protected me from the others. I work here. Serve drinks, help with inventory, she hesitated. Sometimes we raid camps, take things from tourists, but that's just desert life survival, Celine. They killed our mother, Eli said, gently. They kidnapped you. They stole your life. She looked away. This is the only life I know now. You can have a different one, Eli promised. You can come home with me. Indecision flickered across her face. Finally, she reached for the ropes binding his hands. I shouldn't do this. The boss won't like it if he finds out. We can both leave, Eli insisted as she untied him. Start over. She stepped back once his hands were free. Your friend is in the shed. There's a satellite beacon in your pocket. They took it from the Jeep. Don't use it until you're far from here. She moved toward the door. Please just go, take your deal, and leave me. I can't do that, Eli said, rising to his feet. I've been searching for you for 11 years. I'm not leaving without you. Before she could respond, they heard engines outside. Celine peered through the window. They're back early, she whispered. You need to hurry. She slipped out the door, and Eli followed, feeling for the beacon in his pocket. But as he stepped outside, he heard a cry of pain. Celine was on the ground, a large man standing over her. The boss won't protect you now, the man sneered. Not after you betrayed us. Without thinking, Eli lunged forward, but froze when he saw the gun in the man's hand. Glancing around desperately, he spotted a handgun on the bar counter and grabbed it. Get away from her, he shouted, pointing the weapon at the thug. The man spun, raising his own gun, and suddenly they were at a standoff. Other men emerged from the vehicles outside, drawing their weapons as well. The door to the main building banged open, and the leader strode in, his face twisted with anger. What the hell is going on? He demanded. Seeing Celine on the ground, he helped her up, then turned to glare at his men. I told you not to touch her. She helped him escape, the scarred man accused. She's with him now. The leader looked at Celine, disappointment evident in his expression. Is this true? She nodded defiantly. I heard you talking to him, and I wanted to find out if it's Reek, if he's my brother, my family. Family? The leader scoffed, turning to Eli. Where was this brother for 11 years? I protected you, raised you, kept you safe. Out there, no one would have cared what happened to a lost child. That's not true, Eli argued. I never stopped looking for her. Only because one of my stupid guy brought you here, would you have found her? The leader countered. Face it, I've been more family to her than you. Celine looked between them, conflict clear on her face. Just let him go, she pleaded with the leader. Him and his friend. I'll stay. I don't want to leave. You're right. You've always protected me. Celine, no, Eli protested. Before anyone could respond, the distant wail of police sirens cut through the air. Everyone froze, listening as the sound grew louder. How? The leader demanded, rounding on Eli. The beacon is still in your pocket, the scarred man swore. The friend? Chaos erupted as the men began shouting orders, grabbing weapons and supplies. The leader seized Selena's arm, dragging her toward the door. "You're coming with us." "You know, too much." Eli lunged forward but was struck from behind. As he fell, he saw Selene being pulled outside. With the last of his strength, he called out to her, "I'm risking everything to save you. I won't give up." The police arrived swiftly, surrounding the men's car before they had a chance to escape. Through his blurred vision, Eli saw the leader grab and turn Selene, pressing a knife to her throat and using her as a hostage. Eli strengthened himself, and with the gun still in his hand, he rose up and sauntered to the door, pointing the gun toward the man holding Selene. "You said you protected her," Eli said, "but you're as unstable as those desert cliffs, looking strong until the first sign of pressure, then letting go." Tears streamed down Selene's face as the truth hit her. Reaching into her pocket, she pulled out a folded knife, snapped it open, and drove it into the man's side. Chaos erupted. Gunfire exploded all around as police and gang members exchanged shots. Eli yanked Selene inside and hid her behind the bar, shielding her with his body as bullets shattered bottles and splintered the wood overhead. When the gunfire finally ceased, officers swept through the room, collecting weapons and arresting the surviving gang members. The leader lay wounded near the door, blood pooling beneath him from a gunshot wound to his shoulder, and the knife still lodged in his side. Selene's knife. Eli emerged from behind the bar, supporting his sister. Outside, he saw Trent sitting in a police car, looking battered but alive. When Trent spotted them, he grinned and held up something that looked like a coin. "So's tracker," he explained when they reached him. "Jenny gave it to me, said she was tired of me getting lost in the desert." "Your sister is a genius," Eli said, relief washing over him. "I told you she was cool," Trent replied, then glanced at Selene. "Is this?" Eli nodded. "Trent, meet my sister Selene." As they stood in the harsh desert sunlight, surrounded by police vehicles and paramedics, tending to the injured, Eli realized the search that had consumed 11 years of his life was finally over. But for Selene, the journey was just beginning. As the chaos subsided, EMTs moved efficiently through the scene, treating the injured and loading them into ambulances. Detective Sawyer arrived with additional officers, surveying the carnage with a grim expression. "You two can't stay out of trouble for even a day, can you?" he asked Eli and Trent, though his tone lacked real anger. "They had my sister," Eli explained, keeping an arm protectively around Selene's shoulders. "And they killed my mother." Sawyer's expression softened as he looked at the young woman. "Selene, we've been looking for you for a very long time." She shifted uncomfortably. "They call me Laura here. Did they hurt you?" Sawyer asked gently. She shook her head. "Number the boss. He protected me, raised me. I worked in the bar, helped with things." "What kind of things?" Sawyer pressed. Selene looked away, her expression conflicted. In the distance, she watched as paramedics loaded the gang leader into an ambulance, his shoulder bandaged and his hands cuffed to the gurney. "Selene," Eli said softly, "I know this is hard. These people were like family to you, but they took you from your real family." Sawyer crouched down to meet her eyes. "Selene, I understand you grew up with these men. That creates a powerful bond, even with people who've done terrible things. But right now, I need your help." He gestured toward the scene around them. "You're not in trouble for whatever you did while in their custody. You were a child when they took you, and you did what you had to in order to survive. But if you know anything about their operations, especially about that military testing ground, it could help us make sure they never hurt anyone else." Selene hesitated, glancing once more at the ambulance as it pulled away. Then, with visible effort, she straightened her shoulders. "The old military facility," she said quietly. "They use it to store and distribute weapons. It's a smuggling operation. They work with buyers who come from across the border." Sawyer nodded encouragingly. "That's very helpful. Do you know how long they've been using it?" For as long as I can remember, she replied. The boss said it was perfect, abandoned, but structurally sound, and far enough from regular patrols that no one would stumble across it. They killed our mother, Eli said softly. Did she know about that facility? Celine shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. I didn't remember, but no one ever found out about that facility. I think they just robbed Mom because of her tech. Maybe they were afraid she'd uncover the place, or maybe they were just after her expensive stuff. Sawyer placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. We'll need a formal statement from you at some point, but that can wait. Right now, we need to secure that facility before anyone else arrives to clear it out. He turned to one of his officers. Coordinate with the station. I want a warrant for that military facility immediately, and a tactical team assembled. As the officer hurried away, Celine looked around at the police cars and the bar that had been her home. What happens to me now? You come home, Eli said, without hesitation. Where you belong. It won't be that simple, Sawyer cautioned. There will be questions, statements to take, possibly court appearances. But she's not being charged with anything, right? Eli asked sharply. Not at this time, Sawyer confirmed. She was a victim, not a perpetrator. But the legal process can be complicated. Celine looked between them, uncertainty clear on her face. I don't know if I can just be normal after all this. I don't even remember what normal is. We'll figure it out together, Eli promised, one day at a time. Trent, who had been speaking with an officer nearby, rejoined them. They found my Jeep, he announced with relief. Those guys were planning to take it when they left, but they didn't get the chance. Your precious Jeep is safe, Eli said with a weak smile. Crisis averted. As they were escorted 2 police vehicles for the drive back to Alpine, Celine paused, looking back at the desert stretching to the horizon. I thought I'd never leave this place, she said quietly. It's all I remember. Eli stood beside her. Grandpa used to say the desert gets in your blood. That's why Mom loved it so much, while she wanted you to experience it too. Did I like it before? You loved it, Eli told her. You used to collect rocks and lizards until Mom made you put them back. A faint smile touched her lips. I still do that sometimes. She turned to him, her expression serious. I shot him, Eli. Carlos, the boss. After everything he did for me, I shot him. You did what you had to do, Eli assured her. He wasn't protecting you. He was controlling you. She nodded slowly. I think I've always known that, somewhere deep down. That's why I never tried to leave, even when I could have. I was afraid. As they climbed into the police car, Trent turned to Eli. By the way, you definitely owe Jenny a thank you. That tracker saved our lives. More than a thank you, Eli agreed. I'm thinking dinner at the nicest restaurant in Alpine might be a start. She liked that, Trent said with a grin. She's been asking about you for months. Said any guy obsessed enough to search the desert for 11 years has to have something special about him. For the first time in what felt like forever, Eli laughed, a genuine, unburdened sound. Beside him, Celine watched with curious eyes, as if trying to memorize the moment. As the police car pulled away from the desert bar, Eli gazed out the window at the vast Texas landscape that had both taken and returned his sister. The search that had defined half his life was over, but he knew the journey was just beginning. As they drove through the quiet streets of Alpine, Eli found himself stealing glances at his sister. The 4-year-old he remembered was gone, replaced by this solemn young woman with haunted eyes. How would she adjust to normal life after everything she'd experienced? What are you thinking about? Celine asked, catching him watching her. About Mom, Eli admitted. And Grandpa. They never stopped believing we'd find you. Grandpa spent the last years of his life searching the desert. I wish I remembered them better, she said softly. I have photos, Eli promised. Videos too. And stories. So many stories to tell you. As they continued toward Alpine, Eli reflected on how his sister, even after being rescued, would carry scars from her years in captivity. She had grown up with these people, developed a sense of loyalty toward them, especially the boss who she believed had protected her. It wasn't the simple rescue he'd imagined during his years of searching. The victim isn't always desperate to be saved, he realized. Celine had never dreamed of rescue. This was the only life she'd known for over a decade. The world wasn't divided into clear heroes and villains. Watching the desert sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Eli wondered what his mother would think of this moment. Had she somehow known all those years ago that her son would never stop searching? And his grandfather, who had spent the final years of his life combing these same landscapes, was he at peace now? "We're going to be okay," Eli said softly to Celine, unsure if the words were for her benefit or his own. She turned to him, her eyes so like their mother's, studying his face. "One day at a time," she replied, the first hint of hope in her voice. As they drove away from the desert that had defined their family's tragedy and redemption, Eli knew that finding Celine wasn't the end of the story, but rather the beginning of something new. The search was over, but the healing had just begun.